My name is Kyler Parker. I'll be the leader of opposition. He, him, his, verbal POIs.
And I'm Levy. I'll be the MO, he, him, and verbal POIs.
Okay, awesome. Is everyone ready? Okay. Okay, I'll begin my time starting now. On side government, we believe that using AI in decision-making regarding warfare does nothing but reduce the amount of war crimes, reduce war in general, and make more people stay alive. And for those reasons, we are more than proud to propose a few things I want to do in this speech. First, I want to go through some top of case and definitions. Then I want to go into our two contentions for you. First, on why we benefit the quality of war, and secondly, on why we benefit the world at large. But before that, let's frame this round. We're defining this house as a rational actor, or like the governments of the world, and the framework on overall is going to be utilitarianism. A few clarifications I also want to make a top of case. The first thing that I want to say is we think that generally, by the point at which this is going to go into action, AI is probably not going to be bad or have as many problems as it has today. I'll talk more about that in a second, but we think that means you don't have things like AI hallucination, where if AI doesn't know what something is, it makes something up. We think its facts are more in line and more accurate at the point at which it's implemented in the military. And the second thing I want to talk about at top of case is what it means to use in decision making. We think AI isn't going to be a dictator. It isn't just going to blindly make decisions. We think rather, if you're talking about the US, when the AI sees something, it goes to Congress, or like it's discussed in a military conversation, Congress signs off, the president signs off, as you do with pretty much every military decision. It's not just like, okay, AI wants to go to war, we go to war. I think it's more different and nuanced than that. That being said, let's get into our two contentions. First, on why this is beneficial to the quality of war. 8 main reasons this benefits the quality of war. First is on better data. We think, in general, it is probably true that AI has fantastic data and likely better data or information than any human being that could be exposed to. Why? AI doesn't sleep. It spends its whole life reading data, absorbing it, understanding it, getting to know it. Importantly, that means it could be exposed to data than a human being could ever possibly be exposed to. That means that overall, even if human beings may have more experience, AI is always going to have more data, more understanding, more factual, quantitative information that human beings can never have. Better data means you have better war decisions and overall have another thing to check back against. It's always going to be good to have more data than less data, so you have more questions and more considerations, and that's something that AI can provide. The second reason that we think it's going to be better for the quality of war to have AI is because AI has more perspectives. We think even if AI is completely biased, which maybe it is, it will always be less biased than a group of 100 people sitting in a room making military decisions. Why? Because even if those 100 people are super good and don't have many biases, everyone has implicit biases. AI is exposed to hundreds and thousands of perspectives, more than a human being could ever be exposed to. Meaning that if you're in the United States, AI is also exposed to perspectives from other countries by reading their news, by looking through their information. You get international perspectives.
POI.
No, thank you. That don't solely focus on you. That means in general, you're going to just have a more holistic view and probably make better decisions for warfare. The third reason that we think it's beneficial to the quality of war to have this AI is because it leads to more accountability. We think if everyone in the world uses AI, it is a source of accountability. Why? Because people can just say, if a certain country, let's say the United States, commits a war crime and people find out, usually in the status quo, you can say soldiers went rogue. We had no idea what was going on. Importantly, in this world, you can look back to the general who commanded them to do something, say, did you use AI? Did you look through this information? Did you go in blindly? If not, they can get in trouble with international courts, or even more so, they can say that, oh, we didn't know this was going to happen and we did it anyways, getting you into more trouble. This means there's more accountability and people are not as likely to commit more crimes. But even more importantly than that, we think there's another level of accountability because people have more of an ability to speak up, right? If you use AI data and you find that your general is telling you to do something bad that contradicts the AI, you have more of a factual base to go out and report someone for telling you to do something bad. That means people in the lower levels of the military are more likely to counteract bad decision making, bad war crimes, and you get more perspectives, more decisions, and make better decisions that save more lives. The fourth subpoint, similar to the third, is about fewer war crimes. We think, in general, separately from what I just said, beyond accountability, AI probably says we don't want war crimes. We don't want people to die in brutal ways. We think it has an incentive beyond just like nationalism that human beings have to say we want to preserve life. We want life to happen in the best way, and we don't want people to die in brutal ways. It probably does all of the different calculations to ensure that's happening in the best way possible. We think that's probably a good thing. Fewer people die in brutal ways and more lives get preserved. All right. The fifth reason that we think overall it's going to be beneficial to the quality of war to have AI is because it can make more in the moment, quicker decisions. We think some things need to happen fast, or a pilot in the air. We don't think that the service between someone who's looking at the ground, tracking you on a radio signal, is going to be as good as an AI that's in your plane and says, go right, go left, because it's tracking all of the decisions and areas around you. We think that it can make better in the moment and faster decisions, meaning that more lives get saved, pilots get saved, people get saved. We think that's probably good, because even if generals can make great decisions, if AI is able to make those decisions and recommendations faster, that's going to be good and save the lives of both military people and also people in general. Sixth reason that we think AI is going to be good for the quality of war is that there's less war in general. We think AI probably leans on the side of no war. Let's not have people die, because even if AI is biased, we don't think AI is pro-death. Importantly, that means that we're not going to have as many wars, not as many people die, because even if a president wants to go to war, they have now had the backing of saying, oh, we asked AI said don't go to war, and we chose to do it anyways. They look worse on the international scale. People don't want them to go to war. They're more likely to end the war faster because their allies are looking down on them. They're like, this war was unnecessary. AI says a peace treaty could have happened and you didn't try it. Importantly, we think that's bad, because then more war happens and more people die. Seventh reason, that this is going to be bad in general for the quality of war is good for the quality of war is because of nationalism and human emotion. We think a lot of things in war come down to nationalism, wanting to save your country. We think things like Hiroshima, people wanting to bomb Japan, come from nationalism and wanting to protect your country. We think that's bad, and AI doesn't have that, because AI has the international perspective. That means nationalism takes over war decisions less, and the actual quality and safety of the world happens more, meaning you don't just get a single country's perspective, you get many, and that means you're going to have less nationalist actions in general. Eighth and final reason that it's beneficial to the quality of war to have these AI is because you're wasting less money. We think AI can probably, during the time of war, say, you're spending too much money here, spend it elsewhere. We think that probably means that you spend less on the military in general. It's able to find the spending inequalities in the bad places, meaning that more money goes to things like welfare, things in general, benefits for society, and that's going to be a good thing. The second contention quickly is on benefits to the world. Two reasons we benefit the world. First, we think AI technology improves. Why? Because when the military funds something, that means more funding goes into it, more research goes into it. AI is better for the average person. It can help you write essays better if that's a good thing, or it can just help you take care of people in surgery. AI surgery can be better. All of those things improve because the military is now funding it and spending a lot of time on it. Second, and finally, in my grace period, the final reason that it's going to be good to have AI for the world is international relations. When everyone agrees on something, that's better than everyone agreeing on nothing. If everyone can say, did you check AI? Did you not? Can we have a peace conversation and check AI? Did you not? That's going to be a benefit for the world. Everyone gets along better. At the point at which we benefit the world and more, proud to propose.
All right. If everyone is ready, I can get started. My name is Kyler Parker. I'm going to be the leader of opposition, so proudly negating this House prefers a world such and such AI decision-making warfare. All right, I'll just get started. Here's a quick roadmap. I'm going to go refutations of Gov case, and then I'm going to go to my own case. 5 contentions, starting in 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon, judges. My name is Kyler Parker. I'm so proud to oppose this House prefers a world in which countries use AI in decision-making regarding warfare for so many reasons. But first of all, let's just dissect the case that we were presented by the government. Okay, so we agree to most of the framing here. We think that it's fair to say all the governments of the world will be doing this. We think that the idea that it's going to advise Congress and the Department of Defense is okay, sure, but obviously that means they trust it. That means they're going to be listening to the decisions at least some of the time. Just keep that in mind. Obviously this is going to be at least 50% of the time. Otherwise, why are we even advising this AI if we're never trusting it? So we think that's fair. We're saying that we're going to get to more about this. I think it's about AI being advanced, but we're going to explain to you why that's a bad thing later. Okay. So their contention one is about the quality of war. They're saying that basically war is going to be better because the AI is going to focus on preserving the sanctity of life, and AI is somehow more accountable. Here is why that is incorrect. Okay, let's think about this AI's purpose and who it's designed by. It's definitely designed by companies backed by the Department of Defense. What does the Department of Defense want to do? Or the Department of Defense's equivalent in any country? It's win the war. So this AI is going to be programmed to win the war. It's not programmed by the UN to be a humanitarian tool. I'm sorry, it's going to want to win the war no matter what. So you have to accept this, right? The AI is going to make the decisions it needs to make based on cold hard logic without consideration for human emotions to win the war best. Okay, so why is this really bad? Well, first of all, there's no accountability here. Like, consider this: there is so much less accountability when the AI is the one making a decision, because it's a black faceless box that the government can just blame and there's no consequence to anyone. Like, right, if we nuke Japan right now, we could say, President Biden, why did you nuke Japan? Like, you did that. But if President Biden could say, well, a really reliable AI, it's like 99% trustworthy, if you told me to do it, like, we wouldn't really be able to blame anyone. Like, I think this is just a really easy way for the government to deflect blame. Like, even with a more minded decision, if the government inflicted civilian casualties, instead of blaming a general and like losing that general, they can just say the AI did it. And what are they gonna do? They cannot fire the AI. Like, if they throw out the AI after one thing like that, this is an entirely pointless debate. No, they're gonna say like, oh, the AI did it. Like, whoops, sorry, but like, we just followed our data. So really, this destroys accountability, because the government no longer has to fire anyone. The same people who make these decisions, like if they're lying about it and they actually made the decision, they stay in power. The world becomes so much worse of a place. Complete turn on this point. There's no accountability for a black box. The government can use it as a scapegoat an infinite amount of times. They don't have infinite generals. They have infinite uses of this AI as a scapegoat. Okay, and like, consider this. Like, they say that like there's less like war, right? But no, every single country on earth is going to have this. This AI is going to be programmed to like win wars, so it's going to be very ruthless and not cares that. And if every single government on earth, sorry, we have to consider the fact that terrorist organizations and like paramilitary groups can also easily get a hold of it because it's so proliferated. They could reprogram it to like maximize casualties. This could be a very bad thing. Overall war is going to become so much worse. But I'll touch on that in my contention like later. Okay, so like basically the AI is going to like run this war in a ruthless manner, and it's like probably maximize casualties, because like obviously killing more soldiers is a better way to win the war. Like, I'm sorry, that's how that works. If you kill everyone's soldiers, they can't really fight. Sorry, no. Okay, let's go on to their contention too. About the world at large, I'm gonna get onto this with my fourth contention. Just cross-apply my fourth contention to this idea of the AI tech improving people's lives, because it's gonna be so much worth. And like, in terms of international relations, like, if the entire world will have the AI, so will all terrorist organizations. It's gonna be bad. Okay, so let's go into our 5 contention case. But first of all, I have some framing here. Like, AI obviously is not the AI we have now. Basically, Sophie and Everett agreed to this. They say it's more advanced than this, but like, it would probably use the same basic techniques of neural networks, which is the only effective AI technology. It's like similar to the AI we have now. It's just more advanced. Okay, so like the neural networks analyze huge quantities of data and use this data to like make predictions probabilistically. Like, that's how the AI would work. And so on this part of hallucination is an unfortunate but inevitable side effect of this method. Humans don't really have a way of reviewing and understanding this process, and it wouldn't go away when we make it more advanced. It would not. It would just happen less. So hallucinations are still going to happen, because that's just like the nature of AI, the way it makes probabilistic decisions based on imperfect data. So sadly, that is going to stay with us. Okay, so another point of framing here is like, AI is probably going to have the information of the country like it's working for. Like, they're going to plug in their confidential military information, like all their troop statistics. How else would it make decisions for that country? So they're going to put their data in there. That's going to be relevant later. And also, AI is not unbiased and impartial. We have to consider that the data that the AI is trained on is imperfect. It is biased. So it will only have the perspective of like that data, and probably only the perspective of one country, because the confidential military data of other countries is not getting plugged into this. So don't buy that the AI is somehow an international, like, omniscient being. Like, that makes no sense. Why would countries willingly give up their military data to this AI? So no, it's still imperfect. It's still is the only perspective of the country. That is the reality here. Okay, let's get into contention 1 on vulnerability. So basically, the country that has the AI, like every country, they're pouring important information into the data. And obviously, the AI must like be a computer that can communicate with other computers. So they're pouring all of their confidential military information, all of it, into a single like data system that is connected to other computers. And basically, as the importance of this increases, many countries will increase their focus on hacking it. Like, see North Korea and Russia today, which are already focused on cyber warfare. But basically, hackers will be incentivized to hack these computers and get all of this important like information, and this country will be so vulnerable. Every country will be so vulnerable, and really the wars will be worse because people will be able to strike where it hurts, and the AI will advise them to strike where it hurts. Like, their own AIs will say, really, like, kill them all. Okay, right? So basically, what else will happen if hackers could hack it? Like, worse than stealing information, they could influence the AI. Like, a terrorist hacker could influence the United States AI to genocide civilians. Like, it could do that, right? A hacker could go in and tell the AI that it's better to probably like kill everyone, and then the United States government thinks like this is a 99% effective AI or something, so they're like, all right, let's do it, and then it happens. Like, this is a serious issue. Okay, and obviously leaks are possible too. This should just be really bad for every single country's interests. Wars would be so much worse. Okay, impacts are hacking groups and cyber criminals can influence decisions. They're like extra-military. They're going to focus on their own profit. They're probably going to kill people. And this opens a front of information war. On net, for all these countries, it's going to be so much worse. Okay, contention 2 is about mistakes. AI is a black box. There's no way for us to really understand how neural networks make decisions. Like, we just don't. We can like program them, but they make decisions based on their own internal logic. All we can do to make decisions is to give it more data to like maybe make it better decisions. But it's going to be pattern finding, and it's moving to like self-driving. So inevitably, AI is going to make harmful and inexplicable decisions. Even if it's only 1% of the time, it will make inexplicable and harmful decisions. But when you give it the power of an entire military, like when you give it the power to advise the actions of an entire military, these 1% mistakes maybe will be of extremely high magnitude. Because why is there like a high chance of it making high magnitude mistakes? Because AIs are programmed to take on more substantial risks. AI programming causes it to focus on the rewards and risk reward analysis. See like how in poker AIs like go all in more because they're more willing to like risk whatever for like the reward because they have nothing to lose. It's a robot. Like human generals and politicians have to worry about their jobs being on the line, their lives being on the line, their reputations being on the line. The robot doesn't lose anything if it loses the risks. It's like, whoops, I was wrong, but it's a robot. It doesn't care. Like it doesn't care about the risks as long as the rewards are worth it. So it's going to take more high magnitude, like high risk actions, and there will be more mistakes because inevitably some of these actions won't pan out because remember, the information is imperfect. It's only the information of one country, and there's like the risk of hacking. So overall, there's going to be more mistakes made by this AI as it takes on more risk. Impacts here are more deaths. Military looks callous. Overall, like the world is a worse place as civilians die and soldiers die. Okay, contention number 3. Even if the AI is effective and all sides of a war use it, then people will be so much worse off because neither side will be blundering. Like this is hypothetically if the AI is perfect, neither side blunder, either side makes the perfect actions. Therefore, the war drags on for so long. There are more deaths, worse for the economy, harder to make rash approach. This is the biggest point of the round because if they're arguing that the AI is effective, which they kind of should be, then they are saying that war should be dragged on forever by a huge, highly effective AI that's like going to be making the right moves. I think of a chess game where both people are grandmasters. Of course, that game is going to go on for much longer. Like that's just obvious. So this is going to be a grandmaster chess game that's going to last so long for decades and kill millions and even billions of people. All right, with my last minute, 2 more contentions. Contention number 4 is signaling effect. Basically, the Department of Defense or like the Department of Defense equivalents around the globe using this AI signals that the military like industrial complexes are willing to use AI for military decisions. They signal that AI is reliable and trustworthy. Thus, there's more development of AI because it's seen as more lucrative. They want to secure defense contracts, and more people work on it, more people develop it, and AI becomes even more advanced. Eventually, AI is going to be able to take over people's jobs, millions of jobs replaced. Last contention, AIs take over the world. We're giving AIs info about our security. We're giving them so much power, they could just take over. Like they're going to become even more advanced, and also they know where our nukes are stored now. So proud to oppose.
Alrighty. Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna drink some water. Okay. Let me just scroll really quick. All right. Is anybody not ready? In that case, then I'll begin on my first word. First, judges, I'm just going to give a general observation about what bad warfare is and how bad warfare happens. So we're going to say that like bad warfare is where more people die, more people do war crimes. You have like a longer time to make decisions, and it like stalls ceasefires and stalls like all these other military decisions that can actually help lives, etc. We think that like how bad warfare happens is mainly because of actual human emotions, right? Like look at plenty of examples in the past, right? Like look at like the bombing of Hiroshima. You can look at attacks against natives, like back in the revolutionary period, right? We think that like all this comes from this general idea of like xenophobia and like anger at like just like a general group of people and saying like that entire group of people sucks. We just need to do anything that we can to kill them, right? Or like there's plenty of other examples of like how human emotion comes into play. Like let's say that you're like a military general and like your daughter or son or something died in war, and now you're like, oh my god, like I need to just do anything to kill these people. We think that the idea of like these people is inherent to people like interpreting how war should be done, and it does not happen when you have AI. With AI, the priority is to save the most amount of lives on your side and to ultimately win the war. And I think that given that, you actually rule out all this like kind of more emotional sides of warfare, which lead to these deaths and lead to these mistakes that leads to wars being prolonged. We think that like given that, you're actually going to have a lot more lives saved on our side and a lot more warfare avoided in the first place. Given that, now let's go into some of the line by line into their case. Okay, first onto our case, under our first contention, they, as an answer to our quality of war point, they said this isn't true because the purpose of AI is to win war. And this is kind of like their entire case. The idea is essentially that like, because AI wants to win war and because there's multiple AIs, it's like 2 grandmasters fighting and it's going to just go on forever and ever. First of all, we'd like to say that like, it's more likely that they're going to try to avoid war in the first place. And this isn't responded to. Genius point from Sophie. You really have to consider this in the round, right? Which is that like if the point of AI is for people to reach an agreement and not have war in the first place, in the sense of like you want whatever the benefit that you can get from this country in like just generally having good international relations and being able to like make agreements upon each other, we think that you're a lot more likely to avoid these kind of emotional ideas of like hit the nuke button now, and actually have people discuss with each other how like things should be done when you have AI suggesting not going to war, because more often than not AI will suggest trying to save people's lives in the country than trying to destroy the lives of the other country, because AI recognized that they have an AI and that the other country has an AI, and AI probably also recognizes that, like, you know, if you nuke that country, then that country is going to nuke you too. I think that AI is not going to have this portrayal that Parker tries to give, or that Kyler tries to give you, about how like, you know, all these AI automatically are going to just, like, you know, kill everyone, right? If that were true, then why wouldn't the AI just immediately say, like, do nuclear warfare? The pretty obvious reason is because the other AI is then going to say kill them now and do the nuclear warfare back, right? Like, pretty obviously, it's not the case that they're just going to immediately hit the kill button every time with this AI. It's more likely the case that the AI is going to consider multiple different areas here and not do that, because that's actually the better war decision. Like, that's actually the better choice to make in that sense. The more that you kill on the other side, the more that the other side wants to kill you. There's no reason why all these AI are going to be like, ah, yes, it's killing time. Okay. They talked about how you can deflect blame and you can't fire the AI. Oh yeah, wait, also another point on this quality of war thing. This AI is probably developed by scientists and, like, computer scientists people, and not, like, what do you call it, like the war generals who are blood hungry. We think that the result of that is that this AI is probably a bit more calculating and not, like, you know, oh yes, we need to kill them, than, like, the actual, like, military will be. But sorry, moving on to the actual refutations now. Okay. They talked about how you can use AI as a scapegoat. I'd like to say that, like, first of all, like, the military has plenty of other scapegoats as well, and they currently use them. We don't think that, like, this is a really unique point in that, like, yes, it's easier to call AI a scapegoat, but it's also easy to just, like, you know, call one military general a scapegoat and then have them come out and then still make the same decisions. I don't think that it's actually that unique here. But additionally, when they talked about how you can deflect blame to AI and you can't, like, fire the AI, but you can, like, fire a person, we think that, like, you can still amend that, like, you can still, like, change the AI, or, like, you know, fire the AI, if you will, and build a new one if, like, the decision that the AI made was actually that unpopular and, like, now all of your society hates you. Okay, moving on. They talked about how, what do you call it, terrorist groups can get access to AI and stuff like that. I think that this is true in both worlds. Like, AI exists today and, you know, like, still could be used by terrorist groups. I don't really see why, like, that's just the same thing as having AI be used in warfare in the first place. And also, like, not everyone has this access to, like, the military AI technology. We don't think that, like, it's going to be, like, just a file that you can, like, copy paste and then use on your own. We think that it's actually going to be pretty well protected because, you know, this is the military's AI. They're not going to let just, like, hackers, like, take it all of a sudden. There's probably going to be a lot of defenses here. Okay. They talked about how, like, killing everyone is the way to win a war. I don't think that that's actually true, though. Like, if killing everyone was the way to win the war, then, like, every country right now would hit the nuclear war, would hit, like, the nuke button. The reason why we don't do that is because we recognize that the other side is then going to do the exact same thing. We think that what's more likely to happen with this AI is it will recognize that and then think, what is the way that I can avoid death and avoid having to kill people such that I then don't have this warfare that's going to lead to towards a lot of deaths on my side? I think that, yes, part of the AI calculation is that you want to win the war, but I think that the other part of it is you also don't want to have a Pyrrhic victory, right? In which, like, you win the war, but at what cost? I think that AI can actually take this into account and understand that, no, you shouldn't just, like, kill everyone immediately. Okay, let's talk about their framing. Under their framing, they talked about how, like, hallucination will happen and it's inevitable. We think that, like, this just isn't true. Like, in modern day, we're working on solving hallucination and we've already made strides to it, like, in the little time that AI has already existed. But additionally, like, yes, like, of course, something is going to go wrong eventually, right? Like, just as a human can have a stroke, yes, like, I don't know, AI's, like, technology can short circuit once. But I think that, like, the amount of times that this happens, though, is what we should consider, right? Consider the amount of times that, like, your computer just, like, hasn't turned on ever and, like, you know, just completely broke and you had to buy a new one, compared to the amount of times that, like, I don't know, someone got angry at someone else because of, like, their race or something, right? I think that clearly one of them is a lot more likely and will happen a lot more, which actually leads towards the magnitude here of, like, the amount of times that people make bad decisions. Next, they have this point about how AI is not unbiased, it's based on biased data. I think that, like, yes, we think that, like, any bias that these AI have, yes, these AI can be biased because it's built by biased people. But we think that, like, there's a difference here, which is that, like, imagine that, like, there's a racist person, right? And then you're, like, arguing with that racist person all day and you can't really change anything. But if an AI is racist, you could just say, oh, wait, this AI is racist. We should, like, change the information that we're giving it and, I don't know, like, maybe create a new AI to make it not racist. So I think that one is clearly a lot better and easier to be changed and can actually be voted on by society versus another one in which you have to, like, go through this really long process of trying to fire them and all these other things. And also just, like, overall human bias in, like, the entire government wouldn't be able to be solved in the first place there. We think that, like, because it's kind of, like, parallel to the people and it's like, you know, made by the people, this bias happens in both worlds either way, at best. Okay, moving on to their 5 contentions. Yippee. They had this point on vulnerability and how, like, AI must be able to communicate with this huge data system. There's going to be more hacking. Oh no. We think that, like, pretty clearly people will realize, oh wait, I don't want my AI to be hacked, and the result of that is they then protect their AI from being hacked. Like, this is just going to be the same thing they have in modern days. I think that this is also not unique because, like, you know, the alternative is just, like, spies or something. You know, if you don't have AI, I think that, like, on both sides is going to be some kind of, like, trying to get information from the other side. I don't think this actually, like, makes that much of a difference. They talked about how you can influence AI to do genocide, but then the humans will think, wait a minute, why would I want to do genocide on the opposing team if, like, then the opposing team is going to do genocide on us? Like, I think that, like, there's still the human the human, like, approach here where they can, like, I don't know, run it again by, like, asking the AI more questions here about, like, you know, why they decided to do genocide. We think that, like, if it's actually being hacked, then they're not going to give you reasons actually for why they're going to be doing this genocide. And I think that, like, also this AI is going to be trusted but also checked. Like, I don't think that they're just going to blindly be like, oh yes, this AI says something and therefore we're going to do it. This check will actually, like, look at the data and look at where it's being hacked and be able to find that. Let's move on to their second point. They said that AI is a black box and that we can only give it more data. It's self-driven and pattern finding, and therefore it's going to make more harmful decisions. But once again, this is like not like this pales in comparison to the amount of human decisions that make a lot more issues, right? Like these human decisions that actually have the human emotion factor in it, which leads towards this anger and leads towards this idea that like, you know, we can't have ceasefires, we can't have peace treaties, we just have to destroy the other team, right? Like that's a thing that happens in humans that doesn't happen as much in robots, because these robots actually kind of recognize like the logical decision of not going to war over and over and over again, because then you're going to end up with too many lives lost and not actually winning the war at the end of the day. They talked about how the robots don't care about the risks as long as there's a good enough reward, and they talked about how like in poker, robots will like go all in all the time. War is not poker. There's not like a, you know, like a set amount of cards that are going to happen in the future. You can't predict the amount of things that are going to happen in war through probability. We think that you can try to, but we think that like it's much more likely that because of the unpredictability of war, it's not going to be like the robot sees like, yes, there's like there's a royal flush in war here that I can get. I don't think that that's actually something that like robots can physically are possible to be able to calculate. And even if they were, I think that they still recognize once again that the other side also has an AI thinking the exact same thing and are therefore going to destroy that. Really quick on their fifth point, just take it down so they can't extend it. There's literally no way that AI are going to just take over all the world. We have so many movies and people are terrified enough of that like they're going to actually avoid like, you know, having AI take over the world in the first place. Let's see. With my 10 seconds left, they talk on their third point about how it's so much worse off, neither side blunders and there's more deaths. I already refuted this. Under the signaling point about how it signals that it's more trustworthy, we already talked about how like people are still going to be checking this AI a lot because they're scared of it in the first place. For all these reasons, I strongly urge a government ballot.
Alrighty then. So I will start my time as soon as I find the app. Okay, in 3, 2, 1, click that. Okay, so my name is Savitoika, and in this speech, I will be going through some topic case stuff, after which I will refute the government case and come back to the app case later. Okay, so just as to like what they said about what bad warfare is, it's when more people die, more war crimes are committed, right? So like bad warfare is fundamentally dependent on the point of the view of the country engaged in the war. Like bad warfare is warfare that loses, right? That's most likely there. The stakes are so high, and there's not going to really be anybody trying to look, you know, oh, that was not like, there's nobody going to try to provide an exterior perspective, right? And so what does this mean? It means that the AI, as they said, would be trying to do good warfare by winning the war. It's pretty simple. That's the whole point of the AI. But the thing is that what they kind of fail to miss, they talk about how the AI will be cautious because it considers the other AI. Right, what does this mean? This caution inevitably means that, you know, the war will just go on forever, right? There's not going to be a team that strategically blunders by getting America involved by bombing Hiroshima, right? There's not going to be a stupid invasion of the Soviet Union. This isn't going to happen. The war is going to remain protracted. It may remain less intense for a time because the AI, as they say, might be cautious, but over time, this meat grinder effect is still going to lead to worse casualties and more people dying, right? This is just an unavoidable side effect of advocating for better warfare as government does, right? And then, you know, they talk about like how most of like human bad decisions are caused by like fear or revenge or xenophobia, right? AI is like different from all like of humanity, arguably is xenophobic because it doesn't have like an inherent respect for humans that we all do. I think if you polled all the people in the world, it would say that death is bad. I don't know that we can fight that the AI would always say that death is bad, especially for teaching it to win war. And winning war typically requires death, so that it doesn't have this kind of respect. So most likely, you know, one death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic. The AI will only look at statistics. It's probably going to lead to more people dying overall. Okay, so moving on to like the first contention on the quality of the war, right? So they talk about how the AI will try to avoid war. First of all, it's not a diplomacy AI, it's a war AI. All decisions regarding warfare are all decisions within warfare. It's not like whether or not to actually engage in warfare. You know, if I hire somebody to cook for me, they don't get to make the decision whether or not they should cook at some point. It's more like, what should I cook and how should I cook it, right? Same thing with the AI. So, you know, there's like the AI will engage in war. It will not try to avoid war as government tries to defy it. Yes?
Aren't things like ceasefires, though, still part of like a warfare decision?
Sorry, what?
Aren't things like ceasefires, for example, still part of a warfare decision, though?
I mean, no, because like a decision in warfare is like how you conduct it. I think that the diplomacy and like other, you know, examples will probably be conducted by humans. Like that's like in the motion, I think, and it's pretty clear, right? And so they also prevent us with this like false dichotomy between trying to find peace and then hitting the nuke button, right? It's probably not true. The AI is going to like engage in war however it sees it's most likely to win, right? And it's funded by like defense spending and fed data by like war generals and like information about the war And so, they're the only people with the necessary information. So the AI will probably gain some of their perspectives and try to win war. Right. And then as for like the scapegoat thing and how it's like non-unique, right? You can just like say it's a new version and keep using it, even if you don't make minor tweaks, right? You don't have to actually go through the expense of replacing the AI, but you can just say you did, you can keep using it as scapegoat infinitely. And like, so we think it's actually a win on our side. In general, like they talk about like quicker decisions. So, yeah, it is quicker decisions, but like if these decisions aren't good ones for humanity as a whole, we should still win the case. See, like what we talked about, mistakes and accountability and prolonging war as to why we should still win on this. Like they talk about like human emotions, but like the AI would still have human biases, just like the nature of how it's trained, right? They kind of could see that they'll probably use the same technology as today. That's neural networks, that's data. Data can be biased, garbage in, garbage out, so on and so forth, right? And then they kind of talk about like hacking and how it's true in both worlds and how people will always try to hack AI. And then they try to give us like false dichotomy of like a common source, like war AI. That's just not going to be true, right? Like AI in this world doesn't have the power to use nukes. And no matter how much you try to hide something or guard it, if you can access it, so can eventually, with enough money, with enough abilities, can somebody else, right? Like, I'm sure nobody thought that like Los Alamos nuclear laboratory was hackable, but then Edward Snowden did it as a kid, for example, right? Like there's unexpected things. Most likely some terrorist or somebody would be able to hack the AI, see using nukes, see trying to kill, specific civilian groups and so on and so forth, right? And like they talk about like efficiency, but like the AI, yeah, it might try to be efficient, but like that's subservient to its fundamental goal of winning the war. So this doesn't actually flow through. It can't stand because AI is going to try to win. Okay, unlike their second contention, like world at large, like they talk about AI tech improving. Yeah, this might be true, but like they don't like give thought to what will happen after it like becomes true. More likely it's going to replace jobs and like it's going to lead to like mass unemployment, people protesting conflict, right? And like as they talk about like international relationships and everyone checking the eye, like that doesn't make any sense. Like everyone has different like models of AI. It doesn't make sense that, oh, you check that one, okay, like cool, the AI is on board, everybody loves that. That's not how it would work. It doesn't make any sense. Let's get a gut check on this. And like, so I'm gonna move on to like our case on like the framing. They tried to respond like we are already trying to solve hallucination, but that's just like they concede it's a neural network. Neural networks inherently will hallucinate because they'll find data like patterns in the data that aren't there, right? Like nobody thought. Yes.
If there's such a bad decision that AI chooses to make, can't you just rerun the decision and calculation again and see if it comes up with a different answer?
Oh, I mean, you could, but that's the issue that makes probabilistic decisions. And so if people get lazy, if they slip up once and the probability is wrong, thousands dead, right? At the very least, right? Very bad, right? And like, we can like blame racism bias on the AI, but that's not like going to be any transparency as to like their point about like bias AI, right? Like, and like fundamentally, you can just try to blame that and you're not going to change anything. So you don't actually get anything, right? AI is just fundamentally not unbiased and impartial. Like the data you train it on will be biased. There's no such thing as perfect data, right? And they're trying to talk about like how it's non-unique that people will be able to spy. No, I'm telling you, hacking is probably a lot easier than getting a spy up the entire chain of command to be the commander-in-chief of the other army and then to be able to make decisions on that. Whereas it's probably much simpler to hack it, right? That just makes sense. That's a clear win for us, right? And like they talk about humans can provide oversight, but then hackers can like obfuscate like what the AI is suggesting to do or something. Like if they give like the AI any autonomous control, like they suggest maybe doing with like fighter aircraft earlier, right? That even though it'll say like, oh, you should do this to avoid missiles, in reality, it's planning to do that because they want the terrorists want to like have it stray civilians or something. Like this can just happen, right? So on like they talk about like in our response to contention like mistakes and how to black box. They just say that pales in comparison to like bad human decisions, but also like think about it. There's a clear filtration system for the people who we want to be in power and make these military decisions. Like typically they work their way up through decades and people like can observe them, right? And maybe try to predict how they'll make decisions. That's why we have congressional hearings on this, right? If you adopt the AI, we don't know how it'll make decisions. It's the most important point of the round. And Gov has basically just conceded it. Neural networks are a black box. We can't predict them. That means that like they will be able to make mistakes and we can't like have actual any genuine oversight. They also talk about how like poker is not a good analogy. I'm telling you, no game, like reductive as it is like a better analogy because poker is a strategy game with unknown like information, like what else is war, right? And so, they don't actually refute anything here anyway. They just talk about how it's a mistaken analogy. It's first of all, it's not. Second of all, the core point about how it doesn't actually have a fear of making mistakes and killing people still stands. And so this is a clear like upwin on its own. And so, that is my time. So we urge a opt ballot.
All right. Next levy. If everyone is ready. In that case, I will start my time now. Good afternoon, getting on evening. My name is still Kyler Parker. I'm going to give you some voters. I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clean op ballots in this debate. Let's get started right away. Because number one op ballot is mistakes. I think it's very clean conceded by both sides in the round that the AI is going to make mistakes, right? Like all that we get from all of the government is they're like, well, they can just run again. But like at that point, like, what are you doing? You can get like 20 different options, but like the government is going to be trusting this 99% of the time. Like that's kind of established here. So it's going to be taking on the risks. It's going to be making the mistakes. And why is this a clean op ballot in this round? Well, because the AI is making all these high magnitude mistakes, it has so many power, it has the ability to kill thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people, highest magnitude in the round, right? Okay, so most people die. Like there's a high probability of this. It's like almost certain that eventually the AI will do something like commit a massacre, right? Even if unintentionally, although we say it will probably be intentionally. And then so the AI will kill hundreds of thousands of people. This is a irreversible impact because you cannot bring those people back from the dead. Highest magnitude in the round. And as to the scope, like if every single country in the world is doing this, just remember that like the chances of it making a mistake are that much higher. There's like 140 plus countries in the world, every single AI making hundreds of decisions. There will definitely be mistakes that kill hundreds of thousands of people. Clean up ballot here because they cannot prove that the AI is going to be flawless. And unfortunately, when the AI is playing with people's lives, not being flawless, a flaw is hundreds of thousands of people's lives. Okay, clean up ballot number 2 is vulnerability here. Like it is very clear that the AI is vulnerable to hacking. Actually, I'm going to condense 2 of these op ballots: vulnerability and bad actors. So the AI is vulnerable to bad actors' influence. They can hack it or they can steal it and they can use the tech themselves. And we proven that why these are both hugely terrible things for like the world at large. Like so, number one, if they seize control of the AIs, that's terrible because they can trick the government into thinking that it is making the best decisions for like the government while it's actually making the best decisions for a terrorist group like Al-Qaeda, right? So it's not might not even be overt because remember, it's like incomplete information. So don't think of this as like commit the genocide. Think of it as like go strike this location, which is actually like a place where civilians inhabit. So our point stands, terrorists will use this to enact like hits on innocent people, terrorize the world, and the world's going to become so much worse of a place when this AI is trusted to make decisions and terrorists can just steal it or use it themselves or just direct it to commit its acts of terror. So I have a third clean clean-up ballot here. Protracted warfare. Okay, so let's consider that the government, let's take it at its highest ground, right? The AI actually does its job. It's good at war. But unfortunately, as Levy very, very clearly warranted you, an AI being good at war means it's good at winning, means it's good at killing the most people. Because like you can talk about like peace or whatever, but like if it's in the war and if the war is going to happen, which is it's like so often what it is, it's hard to get out of war, right? Like this is established. Like if the AI is going to try to kill as many people as it can on the other side, who are like probably soldiers, but civilian casualties are a thing too, as it can kill as many people as it can in order to win the war. Okay, so this will lead to a very long war with high casualties over many decades, highest magnitude in this round. Think of millions of deaths because the AIs are just going to be keeping going and they don't care about stopping the war just because a lot of people have died. They want to see the war to its conclusion. They want to see it to victory. So just vote on this for sheer scope. We're going to see probably a world war. Every single person in the world will die. Okay, here's another ballot for you. AI takes over the world. Honestly, clean win here. Like if you could forget every single other thing in this round and we win on AI takes over the world, like we got no reputation, right? So like AI takes over the world is established because AI gets more and more advanced and we're just pouring all of the military info into the AI. Eventually it's going to become smarter than humans. This has been conceded. It's going to have all of the data of every country in the world, like especially if it starts making secret alliances or whatever. It's going to take over the world. It will like drive humans to extermination probably if it chooses, or it'll enslave us. It'll do whatever it wants. We probably think that like human interests are best here. So because like the scope of every single human on planet Earth, all 8 billion could be victimized by the AI. We think this is really the highest scope in this round. But let's get to the last, because you could just not buy any of that. The last one sounded a little bit far-fetched, I admit, but this isn't far-fetched. Mass jobs lost. Consider that we are advancing AIs, like both sides have conceded that AI is going to become more and more and more advanced. Thus, eventually, it'll be able to replace the massive majority of like jobs in the world. Like this was never really touched on, but this is a point that stands at the end of this round, right? We're going to lose millions of jobs. Millions of people go hungry. They can't feed their family. There's no plan like by the gov to like feed these people. So they're going to go hungry and starve and die because the AIs are doing their job in the opinions of like big business better than they could be doing. So for all of these reasons and so many more, all of these ballots, so proud to oppose. Thank you.
Okay. I'll start my time. now. I want to do 4 things in this speech. First, I want to characterize this round. Then I want to go into the off claims we get and why they don't win, some independent rebuttals, and finally the gov ballots. Let's start on characterization. I want to ask 3 characterizing questions that are important to understand the round. First, I want to talk about what causes bad warfare in the status quo. We say that a majority of this is human emotions, a lack of information or false information, and a lack of response time. We think AI solves all of this. I'll talk about that more later. The second question I want to ask: what is a decision AI can make? What is AI allowed to do in the world? We think that given the motion, they're allowed to do anything related to warfare. That means deciding to be in warfare is also a decision of warfare, such as ceasefire. They're allowed to say no war. As we've already told you, they will say no war, and that's going to be weighed upon later, as that didn't get refuted. Then, the third and final question that I think is the most important is we both assume AI and humans have bias. So the question is, knowing what makes warfare bad, which is better at reducing their biases and making warfare better? We think that bias is something both have. However, 3 reasons AI is better. AI is biased towards saving lives. At absolute minimum, as I told you, and this never went refuted, AI is pro-life. Importantly, the second reason it's important is because it's exposed to more perspectives. On probability, it's going to be better. If you're exposed to more perspectives rather than fewer, you're more likely to be better just because you have more analysis, more ability to check your biases. On probability, someone listening to 20 audiobooks is going to be better than someone listening to 1. Just think it through. The third and final reason that AI is probably less biased is because even if it is biased, it's easier to check back against the bias, given that you can reprogram it, that you can see it being biased when it says racist comments, and you can look back. AI is likely to be fixed and more likely to be better. AI is programmed by scientists on top of that, rather than nationalist people. It's probably not that bad. Importantly, why does that matter? Because we'd say we'd rather a less biased thing making our decisions. At the point at which we prove that, we're going to show you how that wins us the round. But before that, in MO, Ops does a lot of things, but it really narrows down to 3 claims. Here's why none win. First, they say that AI takeover makes us go to war and that is bad. But Everett and I give you, war forever, like the war lasts forever. But Everett and I give you 3 responses that take this down. First, we say AI is programmed to save lives. At very minimum, the lives of its own citizens. If AI wants to save lives and war causes death, then it makes sense that they would want to end the war and ask for a ceasefire. They probably don't want it to go on forever. But secondly, Everett tells you, even if the war does go on forever, it's a less brutal war and fewer people die. We'd rather fewer people die than more people die. That's going to be a benefit. Third and finally, we say countries can also end war. No one wants to do this. You're allowed to have conversations. That happens in either world. Presidents are still fact-checking these decisions. We don't understand why a war goes on forever. That doesn't make sense. The second thing that they tell you is AI causes you to kill like crazy because it doesn't respect human life. But 3 reasons why we take this down again. First, these 2 responses knife each other. If AI is strategic and doesn't want to kill, it can't at the same time brutally murder everyone. Op can't have it both ways. They should probably pick one. But the second response that's important is that this is illogical and AI is logical. It destroys people politically if they choose to do this. If politicians choose to go commit mass genocide, no one wants that politician back. Importantly, more citizens die. That's a bad thing. They don't want to just go nuke people. It doesn't make sense. Third and finally, we say, even if it's true that they're horrible, it can be reprogrammed, and it probably will be. The magnitude of this impact is small. Third and final thing that they tell you in MO is that AI can make bad decisions because it's a black box. But again, 3 responses. First, you can reprogram it. If it is clearly making bad decisions, because humans are listening to it, you can reprogram it. You can check back. That's better than a person making a bad decision. You can't reprogram a person. Second, Everett tells you, if it is a huge decision, you can rerun it and ask it for explanation. Like, you can rerun the program, ask it questions, be like, why are you doing this? No one's just going to make a rash decision based off of the AI. Third and finally, we say humans check back. They're going to always question it, and it's always going to be fine. 3 independent responses before I go into our collapse. First, as to their terrorist thing, military tech is just not stealable. Everett tells you this. It's not something they can get access to. Terrorists will not do this. And even if they do, that's so rare and probably not going to happen in terrorism. Probably, unfortunately, happens in either world. The second thing I want to respond to is taking over the world with AI. I wrote this on my flow. I'm going to read it to you exactly. There's no impact. It was said over time. It was not extended. It was not warranted. Everett responded to it, and this just shouldn't flow through on your flow. It doesn't make sense on AI takeover. Third and finally, on jobs lost, I mean, you can still check in with the military. All the military people still have their jobs because they're still checking on the AI. This doesn't make sense. Okay, ballots. 3 places you vote gov. first on less war. This literally doesn't ever go engage with. AI will tell you not to engage in war because they want to preserve lives. Why does that win? Because if we don't go to war in the first place, that's a prerequisite to every single impact you get out of side opposition in this debate. Fewer people die if you don't get the war. If there's no brutal war to even have as a question because the war doesn't happen because AI tells you not to. On probability, you're less likely to go to war if AI tells you not to. We can win there. The second place we win is on probability of bias or messing up. Humans have biases. AI does too. AI has fewer biases. You have less of a probability of messing up if you have fewer biases in our good technology, meaning fewer war crimes, more benefits, more people stay alive. Third, and finally, we win on benefits of data. No one has to do anything, but more info is always good. There's a better probability of making more decisions when you have more information. We want better decisions. Proud to propose.
Good debating, everyone.
Great round.
Great round, everybody.
Most fun I've had.
Jared, I think if you were the last one to submit your ballot, if you want to give the decision in RFD first.
Okay. Sorry, I was called in late. All right, so I actually don't know much of what to do. Should I do I say who voted for what? Do I just say
Yeah, just give like a RFD, tell us who won, and then just like why you chose the team you chose.
okay? So in a 2-to-1 decision, a split decision, the win went to Gov. Now that was I will explain my voting for it, and then the other judges can. So I think the sort of thing I get a lot out of about their two main impacts on their largest scale are this idea of lots and lots of death and lots of bad decisions made by the military, made by the AI, stemming from two main reasons. They say that mistakes can happen and that they can happen, and they secondly say that bad actors and hacking can happen. But I think that government does a lot of good mitigation in the second half, talking about why the scale of these sorts of things is small. They really hammer home this idea that there is still a human check on the AI, which I think is really important for minimizing the impact of it, because now we're looking at sort of these 1%, 0.5% causes. And then on the idea of hacking, they kind of point out that it's pretty much symmetrical. Like people are still wanting to hack the military and the status quo, and it's decently well protected. It's probably one of the most well protected things. So that they do good job mitigating that. And then a strong thing for me on the side of Gov in weighing up against Op was they mentioned in their rebuttal that the basically all of these harms that these problems that you have on the op side are prerequisite. They're downstreamed from the idea that war occurs, and government does more of a job in showing that war is less likely to happen on their side. They do this with a couple things. One, they talk about the way that the AI can help prevent war, because it's it can still allow for ceasefires. It's probably not pro-death, as they say. It's probably wanting to save lives, so probably work on that. But also in their rebuttal, they say countries can still end war as well. So really, it's a similar thing with the way that humans have a check on it. The AI in government's world is essentially just serving as another perspective to look at military decisions on, but it's not the exclusive perspective. So you're able to sort of aggregate more and ultimately come to better decisions, and the failings of one, as opposition points out a lot, like humans have a lot of failings, and they do a really good job proving this, but the government is able to sort of work against that by saying, yes, humans have failings, yes, AI has failings. On our side, we're able to aggregate them more versus on the opposition side, it's sort of more in one perspective. They also talk a lot about mitigating mistakes and such as in addition to the human check with this idea of reprogramming. I'd like to just briefly talk about when talking about like the human versus the AI and reprogramming versus everything. Opposition says at some point that like filtration systems in the military are used for the people, they're not for the AI. I think this was a good point, but government is again sort of able to symmetricize it because of things like reprogramming is similar to this idea of filtration. And again, I sort of have this idea that on their side, they have both methods of working things out versus on opposition side, they only have one. And then on sort of the offense side for government, I get more from them on why there's going to be less war, which I think is a good, thing on their side, and it really helps mitigate the opposition claims. We also, the stuff on bias is, like I said, really well worn throughout the debate. I do buy that there's human bias. I also buy that there's probably going to be, AI bias and AI mistakes. But I think there's a good on government, they do a good job of sort of meeting the two. Yeah, I think that is largely what I have. If you have any questions, you can let me know. But it was a great round. Really enjoyed judging
I guess I'll go next. So I actually, I ended up voting for the opposition. So my reasoning for that was really, the affirmation was not consistent in their definition and their understanding of AI throughout the entire round. It seemed to me that it changed rapidly, like what the AI would be capable of, who's making the AI, when would it be used, when would it not be used. The opposition was the only one that was able to provide any context as to how the AI is trained, how it's used, any of that. And to me, that seemed like really the absolute basic of the round is just literally what are we debating. And then additionally, I think I struggled to sort of see the full conclusion of the logic that AI would actually reduce the occurrence of war, given that AF completely accepted all claims that the AI would be inherently biased, and you could not have an unbiased AI. So you were just making AIs till you got the one that fit your bias. To me, that kind of like logic kept kind of coming back up, and I didn't really see enough of a response on where that cutoff point would be. I mean, overall, I thought both sides did excellent jobs with argumentation. I think the speeches were extremely clear. There was a lot of material that you guys both got through, and I just thought it was absolutely phenomenal how much was covered. But that was kind of my only, yeah, that was my only thing. But overall, it was a great round. So yeah, good job, everyone.
All right, this guys was a really good round. I think it was really easy to flow through. The speeches were really great. I also ended up voting on government. I felt like their opinions swayed me more. And ultimately, I thought about this round in terms of like scale and probability of things happening. And a couple of things under that were like the whole thing about hacking. And I feel like even though opposition tried to bring up this point about how like this would kind of sacrifice the whole idea of happening in the first place because it's all under the same database. This still happens in the status quo, and I felt like government explained that a little bit better because this already happens already. And ultimately, everything, this kind of whole debate kind of riding on whether or not war happens or not. And government brought up this whole thing about how AI doesn't want, and I feel like that was definitely a point of contention in this round, does AI, like what AI's perspective is, and government and opposition tried to say that AI wants to win the war, and the only way to win a war is by killing the most amount of people. But government says that AI actually wants to prevent war because it's more humanitarian and it's because it's created by humans, which I think makes a lot more sense. And then there was this really interesting point about responsibility that was brought up in the first couple of speeches. I think that government was just trying to say that, or opposition was trying to say that if we all these governments had AI, no one would be held responsible. But I don't think that this would be true, because government has a really good point about how AI isn't replacing the government. We wouldn't have AI in replacement of these military officials who create these decisions. It's simply a more advanced and a more sophisticated database for people to get information, to get an output. And another thing I want to bring up was opposition brought up this point about jobs, about AI bringing up, like, taking away jobs from people. I didn't really think that was super relevant to the debate, so I didn't really consider that as much, but I thought overall this was a really great round. So thank you guys.
Great round, guys.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks.
lot of fun,
Amazing
guys.
stuff. Ooh.